A cold wind blew through Salem village. It was the winter of 1692. Something strange began. It started in the Paris household. Reverend Samuel Paris was the village minister. His daughter Betty was 9 years old. His niece Abigail Williams was 11. The girls started acting strangely. They made odd noises. They contorted their bodies into unnatural shapes. They complained of being pinched. They spoke of being pricked by invisible pins. No one understood what was happening to them. Doctors were called. They could find no natural cause. The local physician, William Griggs, offered a grim diagnosis. He suggested the girls were bewitched. The word hung heavy in the air. Bewitched. It was a word filled with dread. It spoke of dark powers. It spoke of the devil's work. In Puritan New England, the devil was a real presence. He was always looking for ways to attack God's people. The community was isolated. They were surrounded by a vast, unknown wilderness. Fear was a constant companion. This new fear, however, was different. It came from within. It threatened to tear their small world apart. The girls' afflictions grew worse. They screamed without reason. They threw things. They crawled under furniture. Other young women in the village soon began to show similar symptoms. Anne Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, and Elizabeth Hubbard joined the afflicted. Their fits were public. They were dramatic. The village watched in horror and fascination. The afflicted girls were pressed to name their tormentors. Who was causing their pain? Who was sending these evil spirits? Under pressure, names began to surface. The first to be accused were outsiders, women on the fringes of society. Tituba was one. She was an enslaved woman in the Paris household. She was from Barbados. Her stories of voodoo and magic told to the girls now seemed sinister. She was an easy target, different, foreign. Her cultural practices were misunderstood. They were feared. She became the first focus of the village's growing terror. Sarah Good was another. She was a homeless beggar. She often muttered to herself. People found her unsettling. She did not fit the Puritan ideal of a pious woman. She was poor. She was often angry. She relied on the charity of others. This made her vulnerable. When she was accused, few defended her. Her own husband spoke against her. He said he feared she was indeed a witch. Her young daughter, Dorcas, only 4 years old, would also be accused. The accusations painted her as a malevolent force, a blight on the community. Sarah Osborne was the third woman initially named. Tituba's confession acted like fuel on a fire. Fear spread like a contagion. If there were more witches, who were they? The afflicted girls, now empowered, began to name more names. The accusations moved beyond the initial outcasts. Respected members of the community found themselves under suspicion. Martha Corey was accused. She was a devout churchgoer. She had openly doubted the girls' claims. Her skepticism made her a target. If someone like Martha Corey could be a witch, then anyone could. No one felt safe. The circle of accusation widened daily. The accusations were not random. Old grudges surfaced. Family feuds played a role. Disputes over land or church politics festered beneath the surface. Now they erupted in the form of witchcraft accusations. People used the crisis to settle scores. If you had an enemy, you could accuse them of witchcraft. It was a powerful weapon. The accused were often women, but men and even children were also named. Rebecca Nurse, an elderly and respected woman, was accused. Many in the community signed a petition in her defense. It did little good. The tide of fear was too strong. The afflicted girls held immense power. A key element fueled the Salem Witch Trials. It was called spectral evidence. This was a strange and dangerous idea. The afflicted girls claimed to see the specters or spirits of the accused. These specters supposedly tormented them. They pinched them. They choked them. They tempted them to sign the devil's book. Importantly, only the afflicted person could see these specters. No one else in the courtroom could see them. Yet the magistrates accepted this as valid evidence. It was a ghost story told in a court of law, a powerful, deadly ghost story. Imagine the scene. An accused woman stands before the magistrates. She denies being a witch. Suddenly, one of the afflicted girls screams. She points at the accused. She cries out that the woman's spirit is attacking her. The girl thrashes on the floor. She gasps for breath. The magistrates turn to the accused. "What say you to this?" they demand. "How could anyone defend themselves against such a claim? It was invisible. It was unverifiable. To deny it was to call the afflicted girls liars, and the court believed the girls." Section 5. The Shadow of the Gallows, Trials Without Justice. The formal trials began in June 1692. A special court was established. It was called the Court of Oyer and Terminer. This means to hear and to determine. Lieutenant Governor William Stoughton presided as chief magistrate. He was a firm believer in the witch hunt. He was determined to root out the evil. The trials were swift. They were deeply unfair. The accused had few rights. They were not allowed legal counsel. They were presumed guilty. They had to prove their innocence against impossible odds. The shadow of the gallows loomed large over every proceeding. The courtroom atmosphere was charged with emotion. The afflicted girls were always present. Their dramatic fits and accusations dominated the proceedings. When an accused person spoke, the girls might scream in agony. They claimed the witch's spectre was attacking them. This created a powerful prejudice against the defendant. The magistrates often cross-examined the accused harshly. They pressured them to confess. Any unusual behavior or physical mark could be twisted into evidence of witchcraft. A mole or a birthmark might be called a witch's teat. Section 6. The Reign of Fear, Salem's Darkest Hour. As summer turned to autumn, the reign of fear intensified. The executions continued. After Bridget Bishop, 5 more were hanged in July, then 5 in August. 8 more followed in September. 19 people in total were hanged as witches, men as well as women. George Burroughs, a former minister of Salem Village, was one of them. He recited the Lord's Prayer perfectly on the gallows. This was something a witch was supposedly unable to do. The crowd wavered, but officials insisted the execution proceed. His death deeply troubled many. He was a man of God. The atmosphere in Salem was one of pervasive terror. No one knew who would be cried out upon next. Accusations reached into every corner of Essex County. Even respected figures were not safe. John Proctor, a prosperous farmer, was hanged. He had criticized the trials and the afflicted girls. His wife, Elizabeth, was also condemned, but her execution was delayed because she was pregnant. The jails were overflowing. Giles Corey, an elderly man, refused to enter a plea. He knew the trial was a sham. For this, he was subjected to peine forte et dure. Section 7. Seeds of Doubt. The cracks begin to show. By the autumn of 1692, some influential people began to voice serious doubts. The sheer number of accusations was becoming alarming. The accusations started to target people of higher social standing. Even the wife of Governor William Phips, Lady Mary Phips, was mentioned in connection with witchcraft. This may have given the governor pause when the accusers started pointing fingers at the powerful and well-connected. The authorities grew uneasy. The initial targets had been marginalized individuals. Now the net was cast too wide. It threatened to ensnare the very fabric of colonial leadership. Reverend Increase Mather, a prominent Boston minister and president of Harvard College, played a crucial role. He had initially been cautious, but grew increasingly critical of the trial procedures. In October 1692, he published Cases of Conscience Concerning Evil Spirits. In this work, he argued strongly against the use of spectral evidence. He famously stated, "It were better that 10 suspected witches should escape than that one innocent person should be condemned." His words carried great weight. He did not deny the existence of witches, but he insisted on higher standards of proof. His intervention was a turning point. Public opinion also began to shift. The constant executions were taking a toll. The sight of respected community members being led to the gallows was deeply unsettling. Some of the afflicted girls began to recant their testimonies, or their accusations became increasingly outlandish. The initial fervor started to wane. People grew weary of the endless cycle of fear and death. Section 8, The Fever Breaks, a Community's Reckoning. With the special court dissolved and spectral evidence disallowed, the witch hunt collapsed. The fever that had gripped Salem and surrounding areas finally broke. In May 1693, Governor Phipps officially pardoned all remaining accused individuals. The jails were emptied. The immediate crisis was over, but the aftermath was profound. The community was left to grapple with what had happened. 19 people had been hanged. Giles Corey was pressed to death. Several others died in prison. Lives were shattered. Reputations were ruined. Families were broken. The cost was immense. A period of reflection and repentance began. In 1697, the Massachusetts General Court declared a day of fasting and prayer. This was for the late tragedy, raised among us by Satan and his instruments. Judge Samuel Sewell, one of the magistrates who presided over the trials, publicly confessed his error and guilt. He stood in church while his apology was read aloud. He asked for forgiveness from God and the community. He accepted the blame and shame of his actions. His repentance was a significant moment. It acknowledged the terrible injustice that had occurred. Some of the afflicted girls also expressed remorse later in life. Ann Putnam Jr., one of the most active accusers, made a public apology in 1706. Section 9. Echoes in History. Lessons from the Hysteria. Historians and scholars have proposed numerous theories to explain the Salem Witch Trials. There is no single simple answer. One theory suggests ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that can grow on rye bread. It can cause symptoms like muscle spasms, vomiting, and hallucinations. These symptoms are similar to those described in the afflicted girls. However, this theory does not explain why the accusations spread so widely, nor does it explain the targeted nature of many accusations. It offers a possible biological component, but not a complete picture. Social and economic factors likely played a significant role. Salem Village was undergoing a period of stress. There were disputes between different factions in the village. There were conflicts over land and resources. There were anxieties about the local church leadership. The accusations often followed existing lines of conflict. Poorer residents of the village accused wealthier residents of Salem town. Some historians see the trials as an outlet for these underlying social tensions. The witchcraft accusations became a way to express anxieties and resentments that had been simmering for years. It was a community under pressure, lashing out. Religious and psychological factors were also crucial. The Puritan worldview was steeped in the belief in a literal devil. They saw constant warfare between God and Satan. Witchcraft was a real and terrifying threat to them. This belief system provided fertile ground for the accusations to take root.